Welcome to our regular appearances on talkSPORT, the talkSPORT USA YouTube page. You can follow us on Facebook. We're on Twitter, obviously, at talkSPORT USA, everything at talkSPORT.com. Our regular appearances with the ESPN NFL insider, Dan Graziano. Dan, how's it going?
Great, Brian. How you doing?
Good, good. This is our first time talking now that we are in the full slate of games. 2 weeks in, it's been absolutely fascinating. I'm not sure that the NFL is ever off, but I feel like the first 2 weeks with, some just absolutely thrilling finishes, some blowouts. The Chiefs are 0-2, the Colts are 2-0. Like, this is exactly what we want in the NFL. Let's start with the biggest news of the weekend in some ways. The Bengals get a win. They're able to beat Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. I wrote about this today at talkSPORT.com, but they lose Joe Burrow. And this has happened a few times now, sadly, with Joe Burrow. I mean, he's joked before. He doesn't really want to win Comeback Player of the Year again. And he might have to do it next year. He's now out for potentially months with planned toe surgery. Dan, you know the league as well as anyone. What do the Bengals do, and where do they go from here? And could they possibly make a trade?
Yeah, I think they'll bring in another quarterback just to have the requisite number on the roster. But they really believe they have one of the best, if not the best, backup quarterback situations in the league. Jake Browning, when Joe Burrow got hurt 2 years ago, led them to a 4-3 record in the games that Burrow missed. They really believe this is a guy that's been in their program. He's in his fifth year now. It was Brian Callahan, who was the offensive coordinator there for a long time, that helped kind of develop him. He's now the head coach of the Titans. So I think Browning's performance in 2023 is part of the reason Brian Callahan got a head coach job, quite frankly. So this is a guy that knows their offense, that has run it before and has executed it at, it's not a Joe Burrow level. There's a reason Joe Burrow makes the money he makes and that Jake Browning's a backup. But there are a lot of good players on that offense, and Browning has shown an ability to operate it. So I would not expect them to – anything's possible. But I would not expect them to bring in trade for Kirk Cousins from the Falcons and install him as the starter. I think that would be a surprising move for a team that doesn't tend to spend, a lot of money. Although recently that's changed, obviously, some of the signings they've made. I also think that they believe Browning can handle this. So optimistic scenario on Burrow sounds like 3 months, which would put him back in mid to late December with maybe a couple of games left in the regular season. I don't know if that's possible. That, again, is the most optimistic read on this. So if you go, you're 2-0. If you can go 6-5 with Browning, maybe if Burrow does make a great recovery and can play at the end of the season, maybe you still have a chance to get in the playoffs and make some noise. So I think that's where Bengals fans are hanging any hope right now, is on that idea.
We're going to get positive in a second, but let's go ahead and talk about another quarterback who has struggled thus far and was in the news all offseason, not so much because of himself, but because of the quarterback situation, the Cleveland Browns. Joe Flacco, another bad loss for the Browns. They are 0-2. Myles Garrett has talked about that they were basically embarrassed. I watched part of that game, and I, personal opinion, I saw Joe Flacco, who looked like he might need to be a veteran backup again. I mean, just some really bad passes. He's not very mobile anymore. And obviously he doesn't have, they have other issues. But at some point, I think a lot of people, NFL fans, Browns fans, have thought all season, okay, they're going to make a change. We've talked about this with you before, Dan. Do they go to Dylan Gabriel? Do they go to Shedeur Sanders? You have Deshaun Watson still out there. Right now, every indication is that Joe Flacco will start week 3. But if and when they make a change, who do they pick, and do they let that quarterback actually ride with it? I mean, could they actually stick with Dylan Gabriel or stick with Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, so Dylan Gabriel has been the number 2 guy on the depth chart, and Shedeur Sanders in their first 2 games has been inactive as the emergency third quarterback. So that tells you how they view it right now. If something were to happen to Flacco, if they were to decide to make a change mid-game, it would be Gabriel. So it stands to reason that if they made a change, midweek, that they would try Gabriel first. They feel like he's ahead of him in line, ahead of Shedeur in line. Now, we don't know what's going on in practice. There's always a possibility that somebody's ascending more quickly than people realize because media doesn't really get to watch all of practice during the season. So But I think if Shedeur Sanders were passing Dylan Gabriel in the Browns' estimation, that you might see a change in the game day depth chart. So because we haven't, I think we can reach the conclusion that if they move off of Joe Flacco to see one of the rookies, it would be Gabriel first, and then Sanders if they got to that point. You mentioned Deshaun Watson. He's not healthy enough to play right now. He's still working his way back from multiple tears of the same Achilles tendon within the past year. But he's been posting the workout videos. He has started to, there have been some rumblings about, could he be back before the end of the season? I don't think anybody knows that for sure. If and when he decides he's ready to play, that creates an interesting situation for a team that, yes, he has another year after this year of guaranteed money. But I think in some respects, the Browns have kind of moved on and, in thinking that we need to think about the future at the position. 2 first-round picks next year. I expect them to address it in the draft regardless. But, I guess it's not out of the question that Deshaun Watson could come back and play this year. It does seem to be a fairly wide-open situation.
I want to follow up to that really quick. An interesting report from your colleague, Adam Schefter, this weekend about Shedeur Sanders and the Baltimore Ravens. And you'll know it better than me, obviously, but the report was basically that Shedeur could have been drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, but according to Adam and the information that was put out there, that he didn't want to sit behind one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. What do you know about that? And does that lead any credence to the whole idea that one of the reasons that Shedeur fell in the draft and teams stayed away from him was he was basically trying to have teams audition for him, which would kind of line up with this very interesting report from Adam Schefter and the Ravens.
Yeah, it would certainly indicate that, right? That it would lend some credence to that idea that they were trying to manage the draft process. I don't know anything really beyond what Adam has reported. And Adam's Adam, so I have no reason to doubt the report, obviously. But that'd be short-sighted by Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
I imagine if Lamar Jackson had said to the Ravens, "Don't draft me. You already have Flacco. He's going great." So that you want to be in a good organization that looks out for your long-term development if you're a young quarterback. And while the Browns, historically, I think there are some things that they've done in the front office and around the building that are somewhat cutting edge and are beneficial to the players. But the fact is their history with quarterbacks is horrendous. And so you don't, if you're deciding where you want to go between those two teams, for example, it feels like Baltimore would be the better play. I guess what you have to assume is that he was thinking, I'm looking for a place where I can become the starter quickly, regardless of my draft status. And Cleveland's quarterback depth chart, I think objectively offered that opportunity, at least in theory.
Very, very interesting. All right, I said we're going to get positive because we don't want to just do quarterbacks who might get benched and coaches get fired, even though we're going to get to that in a bit. Let's get positive. I want to talk about Danny Dimes and the Indianapolis Colts and a team that I don't know if anybody. I mean, if anyone had them as 2-0 with Daniel Jones after Anthony Richardson doesn't win the job, and a lot of people thought Anthony Richardson would get that job. Dan, what did the Colts see in Daniel Jones, and who deserves credit? Because that's an organization that has been through a lot. Won at a very high level with Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, never really recovered from Andrew Luck's retirement. And it might not last, but the fact that Daniel Jones is 2-0 with the Colts, somebody got that right.
Yes. So the Colts decided in the offseason that what they wanted to do is bring in someone to compete with Anthony Richardson. I think in their ideal scenario, this would have pushed Anthony Richardson to a next stage of his development, and he beats out the guy and wins the job. But that didn't happen. And what they saw from Daniel Jones in the offseason was consistency on a level that Anthony Richardson has not provided at this point in his career. So Daniel Jones has the ability to he's not the athlete Anthony Richardson is, but he is a very athletic quarterback and can use his legs. 3 of his touchdowns already this year are rushing touchdowns, although it's kind of tush pushy stuff. But you've seen him get out on the edge and use his legs. He did it in 2022 when he made the playoffs with the Giants, that big season that got him his second contract. Similar situation. They had Saquon Barkley playing at a high level. Right now, Jonathan Taylor is playing at a very high level in Indianapolis. They have a good offensive line. They have some good receivers. The defense is better than you think. I think this was a team, and I wrote about this in a piece we do preseason, don't be surprised.
I read it. Yeah.
Right. And the one for the Colts was don't be surprised they win the division, because they have better players than you think. And if the quarterback situation can be at all stable, then, they haven't been that far behind Houston the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So is it sustainable? Look, they destroyed the Dolphins in week 1. And I think people are kind of the mind that the Dolphins are not one of the better teams. But the Broncos are supposed to have the best, or one of the best defenses in the entire NFL, and they didn't punt against them either. So I think there's reason to believe that this is sustainable. And in terms of who deserves the credit, the GM, Chris Ballard, brings in Daniel Jones, the head coach, Shane Steichen, who almost won the division 2 years ago with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, knows a thing or two about the position. I think he's got it in a place where he's doing what good quarterback coaches do, which is find ways to maximize the player's strengths and minimize the player's weaknesses. And right now, Daniel Jones is playing at a very high level in a system that seems to suit him quite well. I think if he stays healthy, there's no reason this can't continue. The health has consistently been the question with Daniel throughout his career, so you hope that doesn't pop up again. But the way he's playing, yeah, I think there's something to it.
Great stuff. Speaking with Dan Graziano, NFL Insider for ESPN. Be sure and like and subscribe to our talkSPORT USA channel. We have the talkSPORT NFL show every week. Will Gavin, that just got posted, talking about the Chiefs and going into everything, and also debating our favorite Radiohead record. All right, you mentioned Miami, and we can't do this without talking about the first coach maybe to be fired. It's only 2 games, but you know the Dolphins. If you're an NFL fan, you don't have to be a Dolphins fan. If you know your NFL history, you know that Miami is not afraid to make change. The owner, Stephen Ross, he might just wake up one day and say, "Hey, I've had it with this guy." What is going to happen in Miami? And is Mike McDaniel the most likely coach to be fired right now? And if you say yes, who are some names, whether it's someone on the Dolphins staff, whether it's an up-and-coming coordinator, a veteran coach, that we should just have in the back of our minds that, hey, if something happens in Miami, maybe they even fully clean house with the GM as well, that this could be the guy who takes over and tries to save Tua before it's all over?
Yeah, so I don't have information to indicate that Miami would consider a change at this early stage of the season. They are playing this week on Thursday. So I don't think, obviously, anything's going to happen on a short week. But, of course, the flip side of that is there's a lot of time before the 4th game. So I would, you look at, like, the betting markets and whatever, Mike McDaniel's probably the favorite, right, to be. So I think the Dolphins like Mike McDaniel and would not want to make a change. Do circumstances sometimes push teams to a position where they have to do that even though they don't want to? Sometimes. And so if this season is going to go this badly, as badly as it did the first 2 weeks for the Dolphins, I don't think I think it stands to reason that nobody would be comfortable or feel safe. So, and that includes, the coach, the GM, the quarterback, all that. So coordinators on the staff are interesting. Frank Smith is the offensive coordinator. He's fairly well regarded. And Anthony Weaver is the defensive coordinator who has gotten some head coach interviews in the past. So there are places they could go. And again, I'm not saying they're going to do this.
Sure.
I don't believe that it happens this soon in the season, if it happens at all. But there are guys on the staff that if they decided to make that move, that they could take a look at as potential candidates for the future. Although hiring the interim doesn't tend to work out that great usually.
It does not. All right, let's go back to being positive, because I'm enjoying the positivity as well. Another quarter
coaches in week 2, man.
Hey, we deal with the Premier League over here. So Nottingham Forest, it took them 3 matches. So we don't have time to get to week 4.
We had college teams out here firing their coaches in week 3, like UCLA. Yeah, so it does happen.
Exactly, and we know that it has happened faster in the NFL anymore. This is kind of the new era of NFL coaches. Let's stay positive. Another quarterback that I did not think I would be talking about or asking you questions about at this early in the season is the quarterback who just won a big game with the San Francisco 49ers in New Orleans. And he was sharp. I mean, he actually was pretty darn sharp. Mac Jones. Look, we just saw this with Joe Burrow. Jake Browning is on the roster. He gets a shot. Mac Jones, I mean, first round pick, starts well with the Pats. There are then reports that Belichick stops talking to him. He bounces around the league. Feels like maybe his career is going nowhere. And all of a sudden, he's got this incredible opportunity with maybe some money attached and incentives to on a good 49ers team with injuries to win some games. What about Mac Jones, Dan, and his story and what Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers are going to try to do to win with him? Because obviously, I mean, Mac Jones is one of the really high level in college, and somewhere in there, we saw, I felt like we saw in San Francisco against the Saints, we saw a winning quarterback again.
Yeah. So Mac Jones, on the, similar to what I said about Daniel Jones a short time ago, these coaches that can figure out, hey, here's what's good about this quarterback, here's what we need to probably steer away from. Kyle Shanahan certainly belongs in that conversation. Remember, Sam Darnold did a year as a backup in San Francisco before he went to Minnesota and had that big year last season. Like that is a significant part of his career resurgence. So Mac Jones, when the 49ers made the big trade up in the draft that year in 2021, to trade to get to number 3, there were a lot of people that thought it was going to be for Mac Jones.
Oh, wow.
It turned out it was for Trey Lance, but we knew that Kyle Shanahan had a high opinion of Mac Jones. He just felt like Lance offered more upside. So Jones ends up going to the Patriots, and as you mentioned, there were some personality issues, conflicts, and all that it didn't work out there. Had a nice little cup of coffee with Jacksonville last year when Trevor Lawrence got hurt. Played some good football down there, and then Kyle gets hold of him, and even if ideally when you sign Mac Jones to the 49ers, he never sees the field,
right?
Because Brock Purdy should play every. But you feel like here's somebody that we believe has some ability, and if we kind of can sand down some edges and bring out the stuff that he's good at, then maybe there's something here. Maybe he's a value. Maybe somebody we could trade down the line. All that kind of thing. So, but yeah, the upside is if Purdy gets hurt, which happened, you have a guy that you've been working with, that you believe in his talent, and he can go in and win games for you. So we saw that on Sunday. 49ers, I don't know the actual stats, but it feels like they've had more injury issues the first couple of weeks of this season than any other team, and they're 2-0. So if they start to get healthier at some point, that bodes very well for them. And of course, knowing that Mac Jones can go in and play like he did on Sunday is a huge benefit to any team. Gets back to what we were talking about earlier about the Bengals and Jake Browning.
A couple more. Dan Graziano, NFL Insider from ESPN. Be sure and like and subscribe our YouTube channel, talkSPORT USA, Facebook, Twitter, and most importantly, everything at talksport.com. Dan, big game, Super Bowl rematch, Chiefs and Eagles. I feel like we should be talking about Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni and the fact that all the Eagles do is win, even if Jalen Hurts throws for 100 yards. I mean, he is just an absolute winner at the NFL level. But we can't talk about the Eagles without talking about the Tush Push. There are reports now that, the NFL will get rid of it next year. You had all the offsides calls. It was a close vote during the offseason. The league as well as anyone. Do you think that this will be the last year of the Tush Push, or how do the Eagles hold on to a play that not even NFL referees can figure out right now?
They can figure it out. They just got to call it right. Like both guards were false starting every single time. Just throw a flag and move them back 5 yards, like no problem. But they didn't, and that was aggravating to the Chiefs, obviously, and to viewers because that play is disgusting and stupid and should have been outlawed. You need 24 teams out of 32 to vote to change a rule, and they got 22. And the Eagles, through this Hail Mary, they brought in like Jason Kelsey to make a plea to the owners at the owners' meetings. So they had it, and Nick Sirianni was rounding up.
Speaking of conflict of interest, we talked Brady and conflict of interest a couple weeks ago. That might have been a little bit of a conflict of interest, in my personal opinion. I don't know.
I don't know either. Obviously, that's not. I don't know. I'll stay away from that one. The Tush Push is. I think it'll come up again. I don't think the league likes it. I don't think the league wants it in there. They tried to. They don't have injury data that supports it as a dangerous play. So these presentations at the owners' meetings were all about No, we don't have injury data, but look at it. Doesn't it look like super dangerous, right? Like, doesn't it look like somebody's going to get really badly hurt on this? Um, Fundamentally, the NFL is is trying to sell a television product on some level, and it doesn't like ugly plays. It doesn't like plays where the outcome is not in question. And I think those two things about the tush push will keep it as something that we continue to hear about each offseason that people will want out of the game. But, even if you support it, right? Even if you like it, even if you're an Eagles fan, you're like, yeah, screw everybody. We're the best. You can't cheat. Like, you don't false start. Like, if you need the guards to false start in order to make it work, then it's by definition an illegal play because false start's illegal. So yeah, get on it with the officials would be my instruction to the NFL, because that's that feel, if you're going to do it, you might as well you better do it legally.
All right, one more. Dan Graziano, NFL insider for ESPN. We speak to him every couple of weeks, running through everything, all the big news in the NFL, from the weekends, from the games, previewing on and on. Dan, the last question we want to get to at talkSPORT is Travis Hunter. And I asked you about Travis Hunter about a month ago, with, the initial idea, like, could he actually do this, a two-way thing? And you brought up at the time that, one of the issues that some other players have talked about, people within the league have talked about, is how hard it was going to be, the reality of it. There's probably a reason we hadn't seen anyone truly do this before. What's been your take on the start of Travis Hunter, somebody who during the offseason, it was just Travis Hunter. Mm-hmm. And it feels like through two games, it's very early, but it feels like through two games, we're not hearing that much about Travis Hunter. And has it already been decided that, like, hey, there's no way this guy can do this full-time two-way thing, because he's not even doing it in the first two games, and he's not making a huge impact right now?
No, and the Jaguars are off to a rough start. And so, look, they are doing it. Like, it's not full-time on both sides of the ball, and I don't think they ever expected it to be. But he played a little more defense in week 2 for a couple of reasons. Yeah. One, the matchup with the Bengals, they felt dictated that because of their wide receivers. And two, they had an injury to a cornerback mid-game that I think resulted in Travis playing more defense than maybe they had initially planned. I haven't looked at, like, the snap counts and seen when that might have changed. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago. I went down to Jacksonville and interviewed him for Sunday NFL Countdown. He's very much about, like, people that want to doubt me they don't know who I am. I'm different. They're like, and maybe he is, but the NFL is very hard, and he's still learning his way into it. And the Jaguars, I believe, are still in the process of learning and figuring out the best way to deploy this player.
Sure.
And so I don't think what we've seen the first 2 weeks I don't think people should draw broad conclusions on that and say, well, this is how they plan to use him. I think they're still figuring it out, and it might look a lot different next year. It might look a lot different 9 weeks from now. And I think that where they are with him is they feel like he can help on both sides of the ball. It's a question of what does that look like each week? Does it change each week? And where does he still have to get better? Is he only going to be a slot receiver or only going to be a slot cornerback? And is there possibility to use him other places? So I really think they're still in that process of figuring this all out along with him.
Great stuff, Dan. It's really good to chat with you at talkSPORT. You can follow Dan on Twitter. He's all over ESPN, as everyone out there knows. And be sure to subscribe to our channel. We have the weekly talkSPORT NFL show every Monday, recapping everything from the weekend with Will Gavin, talkSPORT.com. Dan, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Be safe. Have a great one. And thanks for taking the time to help us out.
My pleasure, Brian. Thank you.